as well. Kim Jong-un remaining on his charm offensive is vowed to shut down the nuclear test site at Punggye-ri and inviting foreign media to witness the occasion. Our next guest was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asia Pacific in the George W. Bush administration. Joining us now on the line from Washington is Peter Brookes, who's now the Senior Fellow for National Security Affairs at the Heritage Foundation. Great to have you on with us. You're just getting some of these really colourful kind of, diplomatic charm offensive type lines coming through. South Korea set to remove loudspeakers to help build trust with North Korea. You said the optics are great. Obviously, the visuals we had last week were historic. Do you think there's substance behind this?
We're going to have to see. That's not really an answer for you, but the devil's in the details. The real challenge here is taking all these promises that have been made verbally and on paper in communiques and turning them into action. And that still has to, we still don't know how that's going to happen, what North Korea wants in return for some of these concessions they're talking about. I can't believe they'll do it for nothing. So what are the quid pro quos? So, like I said, the devil's in the details, and the only way we'll find this out is by testing their diplomatic intentions, and that's probably really sitting down with them and hearing what they have to say.
Well, one of the questions which probably feeds into that is why they're doing this, right? A lot of people scrambling to take credit for what happened last week and any potential deal, but we know that North Korea doesn't do anything that's not motivated by internal goings-on. So what do you think is actually happening there?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressures, internal pressures. The economic situation is not good in North Korea. Most of that's self-imposed, unfortunately. And then there's also external pressures, those from the United States, from China. I mean, we've seen China put more punitive economic sanctions on North Korea than we've ever seen them do before. Others are taking actions against North Korea. So I think there's a tremendous amount of pressures. Maybe they're just seeing, how much they can get in return. But, they're talking big things here. Denuclearization. I mean, think about the time, effort, and money they've spent on trying to become a nuclear weapon state. They've written this into their constitution. And so the question is, for many of us, I mean, I'm happy to be cautiously optimistic, but I'm deeply skeptical, considering the history. The agreed framework in 1994 and how that turned out in 2002, that they were cheating on that agreement. Many of these things have been said in the past. I hope it's all true. But once again, we're going to have to see. We're going to have to develop a roadmap. And I think there's nothing wrong, since they're willing to test their diplomatic intentions and see if they're serious about these things. And if we define things the same way, does denuclearization mean the same thing to us, people like me, complete, verifiable, and irreversible disarmament? Or does North Korea look at it as something different?
Peter, you can also, with what you've just said, you could say, if you're a cynic, that they are up to their old tricks and they need money and need it badly. So you went from maximum saber rattling with all those nuclear tests and missile tests to maximum diplomatic engagement. A cynic could say that maybe he's going for all out to get as much as he can in one fell swoop.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course. Of course, there's another thing they say: if you're a pessimist, you're never disappointed, right? And there's a lot of reason to be pessimistic about North Korea. But look, the Americans have been through this many times with North Korea. We've come to the table. We've even had some agreements. The South has been through a number of these iterations with North Korea, and I think things have to be taken. You have to develop a roadmap for moving forward. In other words, what are they going to do? I don't think the United States and others are going to make concessions in North Korea based on their promises. We need to see real action on the ground. I mean, we're all debating this word about them closing their nuclear test site. North Korea says they have other test sites, but this is the only place they've done nuclear tests. So some people think that they've so irreversibly destroyed the structure, the Earth through seismological explosions, that it's really just a throwaway. They can't use that anymore anyway. And there's been a Chinese report to that effect. So maybe they're saying, hey, we're going to do this, we'll shut it down, but does it really mean anything to them? So there's going to be, the trust level is very, very low. So there's going to have to be the testing of that trust.
Peter, this, of course, they wouldn't want to rock the boat, Pyongyang, anyway, until they've had that summit with Donald Trump, surely, and that will be the proof at that point.
Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, this was a charm offensive. I think you guys have got it right. I mean, that's what we're seeing. You know, the question that baffles many of us have been looking at North Korea is what caused this 180-degree change in behavior? You know, it is fantastic, and it could be very good, and hopefully it's long-lasting. But once again, we've talked about the problems with that. But you know, up till recently, they were very committed to you know, their nuclear program, and I would have said, you know, before this, we heard the North Koreans saying things to us like, you know, we're not going to give up our nukes. Look what happened to Saddam Hussein. We're not going to give up our nukes. Look what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. So the rhetoric has changed significantly, but he is the leader of the country. My sense is there isn't a lot of debate. And if he's decided to make a huge change, a sweeping change in the course of North Korean international policy, then it could actually be the case.
But it's jarring, isn't it, the rhetoric that we've had until the last few weeks? Is it a confidence in their own nuclear capability that's led them to this, and now they're just shopping around to see what kind of, you know, engagement or deal? Like, what does a deal look like? Is it a recognition of North Korea as a nuclear state?
Yeah. Well, they've actually said that. I mean, they said we've done everything we need to do. We were already a nuclear state. I mean, they are a de facto nuclear weapon state. They may want to be considered a de jure nuclear weapon state. They may want to, you know, basically be grandfathered in and say that, yeah, okay, well, you're the ninth nuclear weapon state, and we're going to allow you to keep a minimum credible deterrent. I mean, I don't think the United States, this administration's up for that, but that's maybe what they're thinking. You know, that they can basically, you know, the Chinese during the Cold War until its recent military modernization had a very limited nuclear arsenals compared to the United States and Russia. They considered it to be a minimal credible deterrent. In other words, they could strike back if there was ever a strike against China. They had enough capability to do that. And maybe that's where North Korea says, I'm going to have to keep so much of this. We just don't know, and that's why everything hinges on this definition of denuclearization. Now, there's probably a lot of conversations going on at the diplomatic level. You know, Secretary of State Pompeo was there recently before he was Secretary of State. There's other, you know, officials on the U.S. side and North Korean side are surely talking. We're getting information coming out of South Korea about these issues. But, I mean, we really have to get down to the brass tacks of it to see what they really mean by that and what they want in return. You know, in the past, they have been offered economic development, and they've turned it down. The Chinese have been trying to move them in that direction for many, many years to a Chinese sort of economic system to help alleviate the challenges that they face in North Korea, and they've turned it down. So I don't know, but it's possible that the you know, the leopard has changed its spots.
Possibly, and we've got a youthful leader, I suppose, who may have a better understanding of what goes on abroad. How important is a foreign policy win here for Donald Trump?
Let me just comment quickly on what you said previously. I mean, a lot of people thought when Kim Jong-un came into power that he would be different. He would be a reformer because he had been educated abroad, right? I mean, and it didn't go that way. North Korea, you know, had these horrible purges that you heard about. So it is very interesting from a psychological standpoint what led to this epiphany about engaging with the West and perhaps, you know, ending the Korean War and a lot of these other things. I think the president is very pragmatic about this. And I think, you know, on both sides of the aisle in the United States, they know the challenges of dealing with North Korea. They remember the agreed framework. They've been, you know, watching this policies, you know, fluctuate back and forth over the years. I wouldn't expect necessarily that since it's in such short order that we're going to have a major deal in the next couple of weeks. Now, I wish the United States and North Korea well on being able to do that. You know, the denuclearization, ending the Korean War, and some of these other things that we've talked about, but there isn't a lot of time. This may be a series of meetings. Remember, you know, during the Cold War, you know, we met frequently with Soviet leaders. Sometimes deals came out and sometimes they didn't. I think of Reykjavik with Reagan and Gorbachev. Reagan left. And then, of course, afterwards, there was you know, a major arms control treaty that came between the two. So, you know, this is possibilities here. This is historic for an American president and a North Korean leader to meet. It's never happened before. So, you know, there's so many possibilities, and predicting the future.